Welcome to Something Different. A place where every video is made to capture your attention and leave an impression. If you enjoy content that feels unique and engaging, subscribe and stay with us.
He laughed when he said it. That was the part I couldn't get past, not the words themselves, not even the way he said them loud enough for the entire table to hear. It was the laugh. Easy, unbothered, like humiliating me in front of 40 people was just the natural end to a Tuesday evening. "You've been holding me back for years," he said, still smiling, still holding his champagne glass like he was giving a toast. "I think we both know you were never really built for this life." The room went quiet in that particular way rooms go quiet when something irreversible has just been said out loud. I looked around the table, colleagues, investors, people I had cooked dinner for, people whose kids I knew by name, and I watched every single one of them look down at their plates. I set my fork down. I took a breath. And I smiled. Not because I was pretending to be fine. Not because I was humiliated into silence. I smiled because I had been waiting for exactly this moment, and it had finally arrived. But let me start from the beginning, because none of what happened that night makes sense without understanding what came before it. My husband and I met when he was 29 and I was 27. He had an idea, half a business plan, scribbled on a legal pad, and more ambition than money. I had a steady job as a financial analyst, a small apartment, and the dangerous habit of believing in people who asked me to. He was charming and magnetic and absolutely certain he was going to build something remarkable. I believed him. That was my first mistake, not trusting him, but trusting him without conditions. We married 2 years later, the spring before his first big project closed. I was the one who balanced the books during the lean months. I was the one who skipped vacations, drove a used car for 6 years, and put my own career advancement on hold to manage the financial side of his development company while he handled clients and deals. When the first building sold, he took me to dinner and said I was his foundation. When the second sold, he bought me a necklace I never wore because it wasn't really my taste, but I thanked him and put it in the box and thought, this is what partnership looks like. Not perfect, but real. By the time we had been married for 7 years, his company had grown into something genuinely impressive. Residential towers, mixed-use developments, a commercial portfolio that had made him a recognizable name in our city's business circles. He had a team, an office, a profile in a regional business magazine. He gave speeches at Chamber of Commerce events. He thanked investors at quarterly dinners. He stopped thanking me somewhere around year 5. I told myself that was just what happened in long marriages. You became invisible in the comfortable way, the taken-for-granted way. I told myself I was fine with that. I told myself a lot of things during those years. The first sign I let myself acknowledge came on a Thursday evening in February. I had come home early from a client meeting that ran short, and I found my husband in the kitchen on a phone call. He didn't hear me come in. I heard him say, soft and low, "I know. Me too. Just a little longer." He hung up fast when he noticed me, and his face did something complicated that I filed away without examining too closely. He said it was a contractor having a dispute with a subcontractor. He said it with complete ease, and I wanted to believe him, so I did. I kept believing him through March and April. I kept believing him through the business trip to Denver that ran 3 days longer than planned. Through the evening events he stopped inviting me to. Through the way he began sleeping on the far edge of the bed, like there was something between us, neither of us was naming. It was a Saturday morning in early May when I stopped believing him. He left the house at 8 to meet a client, or so he said. I was at the kitchen table with coffee, going through some household invoices, when his personal laptop on the counter chimed with a notification. He had left it open and unlocked. I didn't touch it. I didn't go looking for anything. I just happened to be close enough to read the preview on the screen before it dimmed. "Miss you already. Last night was everything." I sat very still for a long time. The coffee went cold. Outside, a neighbor's dog was barking at something. I need you to understand something about what happened next, because it matters for everything that follows. I did not spiral. I did not cry on the kitchen floor. I did not call my sister and fall apart. I felt something move through me, cold and clarifying, like the first breath of genuinely freezing air, and then I made a decision. I was going to find out exactly what I was dealing with before I did anything at all. I went back to my work laptop. I opened a new document. I made a list. What I knew for certain. What I suspected. What I needed to confirm. I had spent 15 years as a financial analyst. I knew how to build a case from evidence. I knew how to be methodical when everything in me wanted to react. Over the next 3 weeks, I learned more than I wanted to know about the woman he was seeing. Her name was Rachel. She worked in investor relations at a firm that had co-funded 2 of his recent projects. She was 31. She was skilled at her job and, based on the messages I eventually found archived in a folder he thought was hidden, she had been seeing my husband for 14 months. 14 months. While I was managing the household accounts, attending his company dinners, shaking hands with his investors and asking about their families. But here is the thing about having a forensic mind when your life is falling apart. You don't stop at the personal. You keep reading. You keep following the thread. Because embedded in those messages in the flirty shorthand and the late-night exchanges were references to business dealings that made me go very still in a different way than grief had. The Alderton permits came through. Your guy at the county office really came through. The silent partner situation is handled. He won't surface. Make sure the Whitmore signatures are on file before the 15th. You know what I mean by on file. I read those messages 4 times. Then I copied them onto an encrypted drive. Then I started digging. What I found, over the following 6 weeks, was not a man who had simply fallen in love with someone else. What I found was a man who had been falsifying permit documentation on at least 2 major projects, who had structured a silent partnership agreement in a way that cut out an original investor without his knowledge, and who had used a shell entity to shift project costs in ways that did not align with what had been disclosed to his financial partners. I am going to be careful here because I am not an attorney, and I was not at that point acting as one. But I knew enough to know that what I was looking at was not a series of accounting oversights. It was a pattern. Deliberate, documented, and now sitting on an encrypted drive in the bottom of my gym bag. I called my college roommate, who had become a forensic accountant, on a Thursday afternoon. I did not tell her everything. I told her I needed to understand what I was looking at. She came over on a Saturday when my husband was at a golf event. She sat with me for 4 hours. When she left, her expression was the same one I imagine mine was when I first found the messages, quiet and a little stunned. "You need an attorney," she said at the door. "Not for the divorce. For all of it." I hired one the following Monday. Her name was Dana, and she had 20 years of experience in both family law and financial litigation. She reviewed everything I brought her over 2 separate meetings, and then she leaned back in her chair and said, "You were smart to come to me before you did anything." "I know," I said. "This is going to take time to do correctly." "I know that too." I had been building the case for 2 months by then. I had 2 more months before the annual Alderton Group Gala, my husband's company's marquee event, the one he used to thank investors and celebrate the year's projects. He had been planning it for months. He had, without any apparent awareness of what was happening beneath his own roof, put me in charge of organizing the guest list. I did not tell him I was filing for divorce. I did not tell him I had spoken to an attorney. I went to the Gala committee meetings. I finalized the catering. I confirmed the venue. I helped draft the table arrangements. I also, with Dana's guidance, spent those 2 months building a document package with my forensic accountant's analysis, the archived communications, the shell entity records, and a letter addressed to the 3 major investors in his current portfolio, the ones who had the most to lose and the most standing to act. The gala was on a Friday evening at a hotel event space downtown. 200 people. His investors, his contractors, city contacts, business press. My husband wore a gray suit and was in a very good mood all day. He kissed me on the cheek before we left the house. He complimented my dress. He had no idea. Rachel was there. I had known she would be. She represented one of the co-funding firms. She was seated at a table near the front. When she and my husband made eye contact across the room, they were not as subtle as they believed themselves to be. Dinner was served. Speeches were made. My husband gave his annual remarks, confident, polished, funny in the right moments. He thanked his team. He thanked the investors. He did not thank me, which no longer surprised me. It was during dessert, at the table with his closest investors and 2 board members from the co-funding firm, that things shifted. I don't know what made him decide to do it that night. Maybe he had been wanting to for a while. Maybe the champagne moved something loose in him. Maybe he had simply been looking for a stage, and this one was familiar and comfortable. He set down his fork. He looked at me with that easy smile. And he said, in a clear voice that carried, "I've been meaning to say something for a while. Claire and I were going our separate ways. It's been a long time coming. Some people are chapters, and some people are the whole book, and I think we both know which one this was." A few people at adjacent tables had gone quiet, listening. He continued, "I want to be honest with the people I work with. I'm in a relationship with someone who understands this world the way I do. Someone who's actually built for what comes next." He glanced toward Rachel's table as he said it. She looked down at her plate, but she was smiling. I looked around the table. His CFO was staring at his water glass. The board member from the co-funding firm, a woman named Patricia, had a very careful expression on her face. Two of his longtime investors looked deeply uncomfortable. Nobody said a word. I picked up my champagne glass. I took one measured sip. Then I set it down, opened the bag beside my chair, and removed 3 envelopes. "Actually," I said, "I'm glad you brought this up." My voice was steady. It surprised me how steady it was. I placed the first envelope in front of the investor to my left. The second in front of Patricia. The third I slid down the table to the CFO, who picked it up with a confused expression. "What is this?" my husband said. His smile had not moved yet, but something behind it had. "Those are for your investors and board representatives," I said. "They contain a summary prepared by a forensic accountant, along with supporting documentation related to the Alderton project permit records, the Whitmore signature process, and the structure of the Keswick Silent Partnership." Patricia had already opened her envelope. She was reading. The investor to my left had opened his. The CFO had not yet moved. "This is not the time," my husband started. "You chose the time," I said quietly. "I just came prepared." Patricia looked up from the document. Her face had gone very still. She looked at my husband, then back at the page. She said nothing. I stood up. I smoothed my dress. I picked up my bag. "My attorney has already been in contact with the relevant regulatory office," I said, addressing the table rather than my husband specifically. "Everything in those envelopes has been documented and preserved. I wanted you to have it directly, rather than through other channels." I looked at my husband then. His smile was entirely gone. "You'll be receiving the divorce filing next week," I said. "I've already had your copy sent to your office, so there's no confusion about delivery." I said goodnight to Patricia, who nodded once with an expression I will never forget, something between respect and the specific look of someone recalculating a situation very quickly. I said goodnight to the 2 investors. I thanked the event staff member near the door by name, because she had been helpful all evening. And then I walked out of that ballroom with 200 people watching and got into the car my sister was waiting in at the curb, exactly as we had arranged 3 days before. She handed me a bottle of water and said, "How did it go?" "The way it was supposed to," I said. The next 48 hours were complicated and, honestly, exhausting in a way I had not fully anticipated. Patricia called Dana the following morning. By Sunday afternoon, 2 of the 3 major investors had retained their own legal counsel. The co-funding firm, Rachel's employer, opened an internal review on Monday. The regulatory referral Dana had filed the previous week was already moving through the appropriate channels. My husband called me 11 times between Friday night and Sunday morning. I did not answer. He sent 6 text messages that escalated in tone from confused to demanding to something that read, in its final version, more like fear than anger. Dana handled all formal communication from that point forward. The divorce process itself was not fast. It took 8 months, and there were difficult stretches, depositions, asset valuations. A period in November when I was so tired I came home from a meeting, sat down on my kitchen floor, and just stayed there for a while. My sister brought food twice a week for 2 months without being asked. My forensic accountant became, unexpectedly, one of the most important people in my life during that year. Dana was exactly as good as advertised. The settlement was finalized in early spring. I am not going to detail the specifics because some of that is still subject to ongoing proceedings that do not involve me directly. What I will say is that the financial outcome reflected what I had actually contributed to that company. Over 7 years' contributions that had previously been invisible in the way that a foundation is invisible when you're only looking at what's above ground. The regulatory matter resolved separately. He did not go to prison. That was not something I had sought or particularly wanted. What happened was a consent agreement, a substantial financial penalty, and the effective end of his ability to operate in the same capacity in the same markets. The Alderton project was restructured under new management. The Keswick investor received a settlement from the relevant parties. Rachel's firm let her go in December. I did not have anything to do with that. I mention it only because people have asked. I moved into a smaller apartment in March, which I had chosen specifically because it had good light in the mornings and was walking distance from a park where I had started running again for the first time in years. I bought furniture I actually liked. I got a dog, a big, ridiculous, deeply loving golden retriever named Biscuit who does not care at all about real estate litigation and finds everything I do deeply interesting and praiseworthy. There are things I wish I had done differently. I wish I had paid attention to my own unease earlier, not to have acted on it sooner necessarily, but to have been honest with myself about what I was seeing. I spent a long time making myself comfortable with a version of my marriage that required me to look slightly away from things. That habit is hard to break, and I am still working on it. I also wish someone had told me, years ago, that being the quiet one, the one who keeps the books and manages the details and makes sure everything runs, is not the same as being the unimportant one. Those two things get confused a lot. I confused them myself for a long time. What I know now is this. The work you do in silence is still work. The foundation you build is still load bearing even when nobody mentions it. And if the person you built it for decides to take a sledgehammer to the whole structure in front of an audience, with a smile, because he thought you would just absorb it, he should probably know whether you happen to keep the original blueprints. I kept the blueprints. That is the story. Not the story of a woman who was destroyed. The story of a woman who spent 7 years learning everything about a system, and then when it became necessary used every single thing she knew. Biscuit is asleep on the couch next to me as I write this. The light through the window is good. I have a meeting with a new client tomorrow, one I brought in on my own. My name is on the door of my own practice now. I am doing fine. Better than fine, actually. I am doing exactly what I was always built for. He just never knew what that was.
I'm freezing. I'm bleeding. Slowly fading away. But don't worry, I'm fine. The cold has settled in my heartbeat, like winter living in my veins. Every breath feels numb and fragile. Every smile just hides the pain. I'm breaking quietly in silence, falling slow without a sound. Yet I keep saying I'm okay, while my world burns to the ground. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. Maybe pain just learned to live here. Maybe sorrow feels like home. So I wear my wounds like armor and survive them all alone. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. If you ever see me smiling, no, it's just my last defense. 'Cause sometimes love means hiding how much you're suffering. No, I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. but I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. It's okay. Don't pity me. My heart doesn't need your mercy. I can still stand on my own. I was broken by your leaving, fell deeper than I thought I would. But pain has taught me how to heal now and survive what once I couldn't. You don't have to look back sadly, don't reach out with guilty hands. What you shattered made me stronger. Now I rise where I once collapsed. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow, I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling, I'll learn to breathe again. I once begged for your affection, now I've learned my worth in scars. And the man you left in pieces found his own way through the dark. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow, I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling, I'll learn to breathe again. So keep your sympathy behind you, I don't need what's left undone. Sometimes losing who once broke you is how healing has begun. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow, I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling, I'll rise alone again. I'll rise alone